Welcome to our library studio. Here is part of the YAHOWAH blog. I am Craig Winn. In our last program, we concluded the 33rd Mizmowr as we were pursuing our series on Gibowr. Gibowr means to be confident and to be courageous. And in it, we came across a statement that heretofore no one has ever been in a position to claim. And when I say claim, it means that the person that this is speaking about would obviously know that it is addressed to him. And it reads, "The advice and counsel of YAHOWAH is presented, and it stands forever. The purpose and plans of his heart and mind are for all places, times, and generations. So, for the benefit of the relationship, HaGoy, the non-Yisraelite, will reveal the way to get the most out of life. His God is YAHOWAH. He has chosen and desires the family and these people as his inheritance. There is nothing that compares to it, particularly recognizing that we're dealing with a prophetic text written over the course of 1,000 years, incorporating up to 40 prophets, 20 of which are significant. And all of them have one thing in common. They are Israelites. They are Yehud. They're Jews. And now YAHOWAH says there's going to be a Goy, a Gentile, who is going to reveal the benefits of the relationship. He's going to show the way to get the most out of life. And his God is going to be YAHOWAH. And that's the name of the God that the Israelites and Yehudim, Israel and Jews, have erased, have written out of their lives. And so the implication is overwhelmingly that God turned at long last to a Goy because Jews had written him out of their lives. And that the only way to reintroduce YAHOWAH to his people and to show them the way to get the most enjoyment out of life by being part of the covenant is to go to a non-Yisraelite. That is the prophecy. And heretofore, there has been no one, not a single person, not even a Yehudim or Yisraelite, and this speaks of a Goyim, who has spoken these things in the name of YAHOWAH. YAHOWAH's name had been forgotten for 2,500 years. I was the first after that long chasm of 25 centuries to reassess it, to prove its proper pronouncement, and to reintroduce it on the Yada to Know YAHOWAH website, and now as part of the YAHOWAH blog. And yes, I'm a Goy. That is something to think about. If you're among those who would try to dismiss all of the many hundreds, if not thousands, of claims that YAHOWAH has made about his Nakry, his observant foreigner, serving as the final Zarowa, one cultivating the harvest, as his Choter stem off the main branch. You ought to think it through, because God is insistent that someone will arrive before his return with the Messiah Dowd and will make these things clear. And there is no one. There hasn't been anyone, and there's no time left for there to be another other than the individual you're listening to. Now, don't think for a moment that I'm claiming this because I want something from you. I don't. Don't think I'm claiming this because there's some advantage in it for me, because there isn't. Don't think I'm claiming it because, well, I picked one passage out of thousands and somehow made it appear as if it spoke of me, because that's not true either. If you go to YadaYah.com, you will find 35 books there, all offered freely. They average over 700 pages. We have 25,000 pages of translations, explanations, and insights, many of which are unheralded, and they're all available to you for free. 100,000 hours of work over the course of 24 years. No. This is just one of thousands of such declarations. And understand that by God revealing this, He did not make my life easier. He made it harder. He didn't make my life more enjoyable. He made it tougher. Because the moment you are disclosed as someone speaking for Yahweh, the world turns against you. Look what happened with Noach. Look what happened with Abraham. Look what happened with Jacob. Look what happened with Moshe. Look what happened even with Shamuel. Look what happened with Dowd. Look what happened with Yasha'yah and the prophets. Always the same. Israel doesn't like Yahweh. Doesn't want to hear from him. They've even erased his name. They've denied him. They were so irascible during the Exodus that Moshe said, I can't lead these people. This job is impossible. The people are so damn belligerent and so irritating. God, it is unfair that you've even asked me to do this. And if you have any respect for me, you'll kill me, so I don't have to endure this another day. It's no fun. Let me tell you the truth. To be acknowledged by Yahweh is someone speaking for him, because you become a target. And today, people are nincompoops. I mean, they will rely on AI and say, oh, well, if I do an AI search, it says that, the scholars overwhelmingly denounce him, and he's not a scholar. Damn right I'm not. I'm vastly more knowledgeable and have essentially infinitely more understanding than any of them, and indeed all of them combined. That's what this journey has provided. That's why they're not smart enough to know that Christianity is a farce, that Judaism is a farce, that Islam is a farce. They haven't done as I have done and written 5 volumes, 4,250 pages, putting the Quran in chronological order, setting it in context with Muhammad's life, and proving emphatically that Muhammad wasn't a prophet and Allah wasn't a God. And oh, by the way, that it was rabbis who are responsible for the conception of the Quran, and therefore for the survival of the religion of Islam that is perpetrating genocide on Jews. There is no one else among all of those scholars. Excuse me for knocking over my own book. Who has done this and written 5 volumes to disprove the Christian New Testament, to demonstrate emphatically that Jesus never existed. He is nothing but a counterfeit, a product of identity theft, having stolen the titles and the achievements of David, God's beloved son, and the actual Messiah, the former and returning king. And since they aren't intelligent enough, well-informed enough, rational enough to denounce Jesus and the Christian New Testament, Allah and the Quran, as well as Judaism through the Gibowr Series, and then provide a comprehensive introduction to Yahweh, demonstrating the proper pronunciation of his name, explaining the nature of the grammar and the very language of Hebrew as it was used 3,470 years ago to compose the Torah, and then providing amplified translations based upon the Dead Sea Scrolls. Never have any of these things been done before. Never has someone who has produced, amplified, and very innovative in terms of the process, and yet very systematic and diligent translations of Yahweh's testimony in the lingua franca of the world today in English, with this steadfast devotion to the root meaning of every Hebrew word, proving their definitions. Also written a tome to explain what's going to happen as we progress over the next 7 to 8 years. This has been an extraordinary journey. And so Yahweh did indeed choose a goy to convey this message. Now, I will tell you that as a consequence of that, so if you think that I'm being presumptuous here and that there's something in it for me, because I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for Yahweh and for his people. I'm doing it because God asked, and I didn't tell him no. I told him yes, that I'd do this. And I have devoted 10 to 14 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week for 24 years. Not only without compensation, but I've spent well over $1 million pursuing this experience of learning and sharing with you. To give you some idea as to how challenging this job is that was given to HaGoy, this Gentile whose God is Yahweh, who is explaining and revealing the way to receive the benefits of the relationship. On X, for example, I've been there just under a year now, just under 30,000 posts. 30,000 posts. Most with something either clever or intelligent to say, something other people had not perceived. Almost 30,000 posts for 2,100 followers. Why? Because what God has to say is exceedingly unpopular with Christians, 2.5 billion people, with Muslims, 2 billion people, with right-wing nutcases like the MAGA, worldwide about 1 billion people, with all of those who are lost in the realm of conspiracies, well over 1 billion people, with every anti-Semite. I'll be double counting, but of those, there's probably 5 billion in the world. And this message runs afoul of all of them, and it is diametrically opposed to Judaism, as well as to Marxism, communism, and socialism. Indeed, to all forms of politics. Imagine. You're offering the greatest gift ever given. You have an ironclad guarantee from God himself, and you're giving away eternal life, the perfection of your soul, adoption into God's family, inheriting all he has to offer, which just happens to be the entire universe. and 2 times 10 to the 10th power. Enrichment and empowerment. It shouldn't take a salesman to give that away. And yet we will have grossly exceeded, or greatly exceeded, nothing gross about it, expectations. If there's 1,000 representatives of each of the 12 tribes of Yisrael as part of that final remnant and included in the harvest that preceded. After all, if you look at Moshe working with Yahweh beside him, at the end of 40 years, if those over 20 represented a third of the Israelites that left Mitzrayim, then 2 out of 200,000 would be 1 in 100,000. 1 in 100,000 of the 15 million people who claim to be Jews today would be around 150, wouldn't it? And I am expecting that we will have 100-fold that number. But tough audience. Religious and secular Jews, Goyim, almost universally hate what God has to say. He's never been popular. And then in a world today where people have forfeited the right to think and they have intervened with artificial intelligence, which has no intelligence, and is simply surveying Reddit and what's posted on places like X and looking what's popular and saying that must be true. And if somebody speaks against that which is popular, they must be wrong. When Yahweh has never been popular, nor his truth. Ever. And this is what we're up against. Now, we don't need many of you to listen and respond to succeed. God, frankly, appears to be an introvert. Even in the second statement, he etched in stone after he introduced himself as Yahweh by name, said that he was a liberator and that you will only survive if there are no other gods in his presence. He wrote vociferously about his opposition to religion in the second statement. And then at the conclusion of that statement, he said, because of religion, fathers corrupt their sons to the 3rd and 4th generation. And therefore, it's only thousands who, by observing the terms and conditions of the covenant, will receive his mercy. Thousands amongst billions today would be 1 in a million. 8,000 against 8 billion, wouldn't it? So this is what we're dealing with. It's why this job is so difficult, and yet God made it exceedingly clear that he had chosen a Nakry, an observant foreigner, a Choter, stem off the main branch, a Zarowa, one cultivating the final harvest, a person named Yada, who is one who knows, a BasharHerald on behalf of his beloved son and king, HaGoy, to share this message with you. So now as we move through the 33rd Mizmowr and we are pursuing the revelations that will all be part of what is going to be published as ComingHome for BasharHerald, we are confronted by an interesting conundrum. I'm not sure it matters much, but I thought I would share it with you anyway. Who is Abimelech? And why did Dowd taste for him change if it did at all? Or since there are no definitive answers for either question, should we assume that this introduction to the 34th Psalm was scribed for another time as a way to introduce a narrative few have previously understood? In search of these answers, we find that the Dead Sea Scrolls are actually of considerable value, because while Dowd by Dowd was written in the introduction as witness in the scroll found in K4 in 1983, and then cataloged as 4Q83PS, none of what follows now in the Masoretic text appears. So I think we proceed with an eye to the witness that was written 14 centuries previous. Concerning Dowd. Now that, I think, is the extent of it, but should you prefer the Masoretic text, with his repeated differences with regard to his taste toward the presence of Abimelech, which means my father is king. He banished and expelled him, and he walked away. None of which is included in 4Q83PS as the introduction for the 34th Mizmowr, other than concerning Dowd. Well, not that it matters, but just for curiosity's sake, I found that Abimelech was actually a common name among those residing in the periphery of Israel. And it is because kingdoms passed from father to son. So to say, my dad's king, of course, that would be the name of a king, wouldn't it? That's the only way you become king, if your daddy is a king. So among scholars, this name is typically identified with one of two men, either Ahimelech, which would be more in the meaning my brother is king, who was actually a priest of Nob, presiding over the tabernacle, or it's Achish, which is again based upon the word for brother, and he was the king of the Philistine town of Gath. These stories are shared in 1 Samuel 21 and 22. While Dowd was trying to figure out how to survive King Shaul's relentless pursuit of him. However, neither episode fits the narrative that follows. So there is no merit, I suppose, in belaboring the point, other than I enjoy full disclosure. I want people who like to think to be part of this family. I want people who want the information and want a good and complete an explanation of it as is possible, so that they can validate what they have come to know and understand, to be part of the covenant family. And so if detail like this is wearisome to you, then you probably don't belong. If you like to think and if you're open to learning, well, then that's an entirely different story, isn't it? The Mizmowr, or song, these lyrics begin with, I will commend and extol that which pertains to Yahweh in every situation and on every occasion, continually conveying his positive attributes, his renown and his reputation by my mouth. See, these were lyrics to songs. That's what the Mizmowr represent. This was 34:1. All who come to know Yahweh, genuinely know him, respond similarly. This is the heart and soul of what you find throughout the YadaYahowah series. Knowing Yahweh, becoming familiar with him, causes us on every occasion possible to convey everything that's wonderful about him. His renown, his reputation, his attributes. For the most part, my life has been spent doing these things through fingers, creating words that appear in the text of books that are published. But we have, at Yahweh's request over this last year, turned to the YAHOWAH blog and are now using our pay mouth. And indeed, Yahweh has three men whom we know for certain he has used their pay mouth. Of course, when Moshe was reticent of working with Yahweh, God introduced himself to him. The entire top of Mount Choreb was ablaze. It means that the rocky crag was ablaze, not a stupid bush. People are just so idiotic when they render words. They just don't look at the full palette of similar words that would lead them to a far more profoundly important and accurate understanding. But as he was there talking with Yahweh, and Yahweh said, I want you to go back into Mitzrayim, and we're going to liberate my people. And Moshe says, no, I don't want to do that. No, you got the wrong guy. I don't want to do that. I have no interest in going back there. Didn't like it. Didn't like them. Don't like any part of Mitzrayim. And I don't much like the people you want to liberate. They were really mean to me when I tried to stand up to them. So no, find somebody else. Besides that, I got a thick tongue, and I don't articulate words nicely as you want me to. And God's response to that was fairly ingenious. It's a bit sarcastic. God is, I think, is just universally this way when working through those he has chosen. If you don't have a sense of humor, a little bit of a thick skin, then you're just not suitable for the job. So we told Moshe, so, hey, pal, who do you think invented the mouth? You think maybe if I invented it, that I know how to use it? That should have stumped the stars, shouldn't it? So we know that indeed, when we read Devarim, Deuteronomy, that the words that we are reciting were actually spoken by Yahweh using the mouth of Moshe. I think prior to that time, when Moshe speaks, he is speaking for himself. When he writes, he is writing for Yahweh. Now, the second we know is Dowd, because Yahweh specifically introduces Dowd in the 18th chapter of Devarim. And he tells us that this prophet will arrive. They'll be very similar to Moshe in that he is both a significant player in God's story and also a prophet, and that he will articulate words because God will put them in his mouth, and that we need to listen to him. And he's going to hold those accountable who don't. And that's important since Dowd fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikuwrym, and he is therefore our Savior. There is no means to eternal life, to the perfection of our souls, to inclusion in the covenant, being enriched and empowered by God as a result, without accepting this gift that has been offered by the very Son of God, David. But he said specifically that he was going to put his words in Dowd's mouth. And when Yahweh addresses his last witness, this Gentile, Nakry, he refers to him as a voice, a coal voice. And he also says that he's going to put his words in his mouth. And so there are three whose mouths would be used by Yahweh. And it's not, I don't think, Yahweh's favorite approach. You might say, why not? He's God. He's articulate. He's brilliant. He's always right. He knows just what to say at the perfect time. Why doesn't he just pick a person and use their mouth and be done with it? Because that would make that person nothing but a machine, a tool. They're not valued for anything they can contribute. God might as well just be back into that flaming fire with a voice that resonates out of the fire. Well, that didn't work out real well because it intimidated the children of Israel to the point they said, "Go away, shut up. We never want to see you or hear from you again." Didn't work well, did it? And so what Yahweh's preference is to work through people so that they are schooled by him, they learn from him, and that they grow with him, and they endure both triumph and heartache along the way and can empathize with him and have some grit and some stick-to-itiveness as a result of this process, and be impassioned witnesses on behalf of what God is offering. He wants to work with us, not simply use us. But indeed, Dowd was one of those people whose, at times, God spoke directly through his mouth. And at times, Dowd spoke for himself. But I think to a very large extent, the lyrics of the Mizmowr and Mashal, Proverbs and Psalms that Dowd comprised were largely lyrics that Dowd sung, with Yahweh providing many, if not most, of the words. So this next line conveys an essential truth. Dowd's Bashar, his physical bodies, and he will have had 3 of them, have, well, the first 2 anyway, have come and gone. Although his nefesh soul lives and shines forever. This is the thing that people just can't get through their noggin. That your physical body, it can die, it can be buried, it can be cremated, it can be worm eaten, it can be lost at sea. It doesn't matter. Your physical body is meaningless after this life. It begins to deteriorate almost at the time you pass through adolescence. It is fragile. The part of you that matters is your soul. And your soul is energy-based. And when it is incorporated in radiant energy and light that Yahweh is providing to empower and to enrich us as part of the covenant family, then your soul can endure forever and can travel through the universe and through time. But it's only the soul that matters. And in the case of Dowd, the reason he can have multiple lives, as will Eliah, as will I, and every covenant member is going to have 2. 3 will have 3, is that the soul continues. All God has to do to use a person's soul a second or third time is to put it back in a physical body. Not difficult. He invented DNA. He most certainly can do it. You don't think that, or do you think, I can't imagine people actually would think this, that Adam and Chawah were babies, and that God can only create babies, just babies, babies, babies. He is not able to put a soul, a nefesh, in an adult person. Would you think that's true? Do you think that when Eliah returns, that he's going to return as a baby? Because God can't do adults. When Yahweh said that Dowd is going to return with him and be king of forevermore and for everything, do you think that Dowd's going to return as an infant? Do you think that God's fixated on the Madonna and child myth of Babylon? No. God can easily take a soul, any soul, and put it in any number of bodies that he wishes to. It's not reincarnation. This is a soul that is something that Yahweh has conceived and developed an affinity with, he can put it in another body and have that body serve a function. And ultimately, when we return as covenant and we have passed through either the harvest of Shabuah or Taruw'ah, or become part of the covenant following the 1,000-year celebration of Sukah, then those covenant members are going to be spiritual beings, which means that their nephesh soul will be enveloped in or, light, and energy. And as such, recognize that E equals MC squared. Do you have any idea what that means? It actually means that energy and matter are the same thing. They're just different amounts of the same thing. And so an energy-based being can take a tiny aspect of its nature and convert that into matter using E equals MC squared times the square of the speed of light, and go back and forth between the two at any time. It's an equation. You can go back and why would you do that? Let's just say that you wanted to go travel to another solar system in this galaxy or in another galaxy. It would take forever to get there, even at the speed of light. But if you were energy based, you can get there at no time, because on a photon of light, time simply exists. It does not move. Therefore, it would seem like an instant, the blink of an eye, to travel 40 to 80 billion light years. And once you get there, if you find a hospitable environment, you can go back to a material being, experience the stillness of time, the warmth of the sun on your cheeks, the coolness of water on your feet. Enjoy walking through the grass, to smell the wind blowing through the trees, hear the birds sing. You can do all of those things. Enjoy a wonderful meal celebrating Pesach throughout eternity with a physical being. And then when the time strikes you, because you'll be infinite in time, go back to energy. So the fact is that Bashar's physical bodies can come and go. It's the nephesh that has value. Now, the vast preponderance of human nephesh simply cease to exist. Same thing is true with animal nephesh. There's no reward, no punishment. They live their lives, and when their lives are over, they just dissipate into nothingness. Their life was a gift, and they had free will and could have done something magnificent with it, but most don't. Those who have been religious and political, to the extent that they're not just misled, but are egregious and misleading, or they're conspiratorial, well, they've written a ticket to Sheol, a place of separation. It's not there to torture them. It's there to keep these malcontents and embittered, misleading souls from corrupting other people. They're making life miserable for the rest of us, though. They are assumed to have allied themselves with the adversary, which is an eternal spirit, and they go off to Sheol. And those who have accepted the terms and conditions of the covenant, attended Yahweh's Moed Mikre as they were intended, and have accepted what Father and Son have accomplished through Pesach, Matz, and Bikuwrym, well, they enter Shamayim, the seventh dimension, are part of God's family, and their souls endure forever. And they're the ones who are able to maneuver as we have been sharing. So this is the story of the difference between a Bashar and a Nephesh. So what Dowd wrote next conveys this message. His Nephesh, physical bodies, have come, they have gone, they've served a purpose. While his Nephesh soul, well, it endures forever, and it is now surrounded by light. So with YAHOWAH, Dowd wrote, my soul, my Nephesh, continually radiates light and shines brilliantly apart from any outside influence. It is halal. It glows from the source. It was written in the Hit Pael imperfect. Hit Pael stems means that there's no outside influence causing this to occur, and the imperfect means that this occurrence is ongoing throughout time. The responsive who answer. This is another one of the great insights that we're providing that everyone seems to stumble over. The word is ana. It is typically used as an adjective, and it is rendered the humble, the meek, the mild-mannered, the downcast, the needy, the lowly. But ana is based upon and sounds identical to the pronunciation of the verbal root ana. And ana means to be responsive, to answer, to reply, to sing, to shout, to make a declaration. And therefore, we're going to render God's words accurately so that you know what God had to say. Because he just said, with Yahweh, my soul continues to radiate light and shines brilliantly apart from any outside influence. The responsive who answer choose to continually listen. And they're related. What God says he is offering through Dowd, he will also offer to us. Now, he's not going to make you king. You can't be his firstborn, but you can be his son or daughter. You can be chosen by him. You can't be the Messiah, but you can be part of his flock, of the ultimate shepherd. Your soul can radiate light just as Dowd's will. You just need to be similarly responsive. You need to choose to continually listen and not pray. Stop praying. Start listening if you want your soul to glow, as does Dowd's. Those who attack me, YadaYahowah, those who are part of and have grown up in and continue to participate in conspiracies, which would be the mother goddess cult that has been so nasty here recently. The one thing we have learned through research is that those who have grown up in conspiracies and who return to them all have one thing in common. They can be young or old, any ethnicity, any religion, any political persuasion. They can be rich or poor. They can live anywhere in the world. There's only one common denominator. They all live miserable, unfulfilling lives, and they're looking for someone else to blame. I think that's important for you to know when God says that if you are responsive to him, if you're listening to him, then you're elated. You are delighted. You're happy with your life. You're not looking for someone else to blame for your miserable condition. You are not part of a conspiracy cult, is what God is saying. Something to think about. Yahweh was able to redeploy Dowd's soul in a body that would serve to fulfill Pesach as the lamb. And then once the Bashar, that's body, fulfilled its purpose allow his son's nephesh, soul, to carry our guilt into Sheol, hell, on matzah, to unleaven us of the religious guilt that we had endured previously. And this not only confirms that Peter and Paul's New Testament slander regarding Dowd being dead and buried was erroneous and egregious. This reinforces God's declaration in the 89th Psalm when he reveals that his son will return with his position of honor glowing as brilliant as the sun. Now, putting all of these thoughts together, our King is affirming that those who respond to what we are hearing will be elated. The inference is also that those who prefer religious corruptions of God's plan, they're not going to be very happy with their decision. There is only one way to God, and that's through Dowd, the actual Messiah and firstborn son, our King. And that is why our discovery of Dowd as the Messiah and the Son of God, who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikuwrym in year 4000 33 CE, as he and others foretold, is so essential. It is why it is crucial that we openly denounce Judaism and Christianity for protesting otherwise. You should choose to become great, even glorious, growing in status by approaching Yahweh with me. We should choose to lift up his name together. So we have Dowd saying that his nephesh soul is brilliant, radiating light. And then, just as I had suggested, that anything that Dowd experiences as part of his relationship with God, being enriched, glory, honor, respect, empowered, the soul glowing, entering Shamayim, inheriting what Yahweh has to give, that all of those things, all of those benefits are also being afforded to us. God's consistent. Dowd was his firstborn, but not his only child. All of us in the covenant are sons and daughters of Yahweh, therefore brothers of Dowd. So now he is affirming that this is true. Now, it shouldn't have taken me, HaGoy, after 3,000 years after he wrote these words, to bring your attention to it, but at least better late than never, huh? So it says you should choose to become great, even glorious, growing in status, gadol, becoming honored, enriched, important, highly valued. This is the Peel imperative, second person masculine, plural. Peel means that the soul that this is speaking to will endure the effect of the verb, which is to become great, even glorious. And the imperative means that we choose this for ourselves. And the means to become great? By approaching Yahweh. Now, just think for a moment, if you were amongst the dunderheads that are so insistent, because their lives are miserable, that they want everybody to be humble around God. Yeah, you want to please God, gotta be humble. Why would Dowd say, you should choose to be great? You should choose to be glorious. You should choose to grow in stature. If the path to God was by being meek and humble and lowly. I know that the religious don't like it when you speak to them this way. And it just blows fuses in their little brains when they're confronted with the numbskullness of their nincompoopery. That's a technical term there, Rich, if you want to look it up.
I have to spell check that?
Yeah, just spell check that for me. Yeah. Poor Kevin or Rich, whoever writes the captions for our shorts, they all have captions underneath them, now has to figure out a way to spell those words. Good luck with that. That's why you have those jobs and I don't. But think of it. That's why when I saw ana, I instinctively knew that no, its verbal root was ana, and therefore it means to be responsive. And if you're responsive and you approach YAHOWAH, then you have the opportunity to be great, even glorious, growing in stature and status, becoming highly valued and important. The opposite of the religious concept of humble. God's great. Why would somebody who is great and glorious want somebody who's please don't hurt me. Oh God, I'm so worthless. Don't treat me like I really am. Come on, folks. Get real. Stop turning God into this cosmic killjoy that wants to lord over everybody and intimidate them. What's wrong with you? Listen to what he has to say, respond to him, and approach him based upon what he is offering and expecting in return, and you can choose to be great, even glorious. We should choose to lift up his name together. Now, what's the first step in becoming great, even glorious, growing and glowing with YAHOWAH? Choosing to lift up his name together within a community. Please think about it. Why did Dowd write that showing the way to the benefits of the relationship, the GOY, would show the way to get the greatest enjoyment out of life? And his God is YAHOWAH. Doesn't this lead us to that very same place? You should choose to become great, even glorious, growing in status, Gadol, by approaching YAHOWAH with me. We should choose to lift up his name together. No, with me. With whom? With me. Who wrote this? Oh, yeah, we've verified that, didn't we? It was Dowd, wasn't it? How would you become great with Dowd? Think it through now. Would you become great with Dowd because he killed Goliath? No, that wouldn't make you great, would it? Would you become great with Dowd because YAHOWAH anointed him Messiah? No, it wouldn't help either, because prior to me, it reminding people, no one knew that. Would you become great with YAHOWAH by coming to recognize that he really is the Son of God, not that other guy? No. That would just be acknowledging who Dowd is. How would you become great by approaching YAHOWAH with me, Dowd, if it wasn't for the fact that Dowd is the one who opened the doorway to life by fulfilling Pesach as the lamb, who perfected our souls so we could enter through that door, through that threshold into eternity, cleansed and perfected, because Dowd's nefesh, the very thing that he was saying was glowing, took our guilt into Sheol to deposit it there, never to be seen again, so that the firstborn of YAHOWAH could sign our adoption papers so that we become Bikuwrym, firstborn children of Almighty God, so that God could enrich us and empower us tenfold, making us great, even glorious, by approaching YAHOWAH with Dowd. It's the only way to approach him. Now that's profound. Did you expect that as we were reading this, the 34th Mizmowr, that you would find something that profoundly important, that your soul will glow, that you will be great, even glorious, growing in status by approaching YAHOWAH with Dowd? And that the way to achieve that is to be responsive by listening to YAHOWAH? And did you know that the only thing that would differentiate those who are genuine and those who are not is whether they choose to lift up Yahweh's name altogether in one accord, the same way as YAHOWAH. Profound, folks. And you're hearing it here for the first time ever. You can put this in your AI chatbot or your social media AI and say, well, what do you think? It doesn't think. When you have one voice against millions, it can't process that. It's not trained to do so, not programmed to do so. And if you can't think it through, then there's no hope for you either. And if you want to be opposed to it, goodbye. This is something extraordinary. This is something unheralded in the human experience. What you are being privy to at this moment about having a relationship with Almighty God. And folks, you couldn't have picked a better time. We're only 7.5 years away from his return. And the end of normal human time as it has been known, for the new beginning, the restoration of earth back to the conditions experienced in Eden, the end of religion and politics and conspiracy. What a marvelous time. And a time where if you go to YadaYah.com now and begin learning and equip yourself appropriately, you can actually make a difference in other people's lives, particularly if you're a Yisraelite in Israel. You can profoundly enhance the covenant family. You can earn respect from YAHOWAH, the creator God of the universe, for being one of those who makes a profound difference in Israel amongst Yehudim. Well, here, the Father and Son, YAHOWAH and Dowd, are offering the sun, the moon, and the stars, so to speak. If we accept what they are presenting, we grow exponentially. We're transformed from physical beings to energy and light. And you'll note that the beneficiaries know and they respect Yahweh's name, crediting him for our promotion. As for all together, well, of course, that has not yet occurred. Making this pronouncement prophetic. The same should be said of Yahweh's glorious arrival. Even more impressive, our King is offering to share his glory with us. He said, you can do this with him. We can claim similar status with YAHOWAH when we approach God through Dowd. And so everything that is worthwhile, it starts right here. I sought to find, to learn about, and then form a relationship with YAHOWAH. And he answered me. From all of my concerns and anxieties, he delivered me. He spared, defending, liberating me. Hiphil, perfect, third person, masculine, singular. Mizmowr, song, Psalm 34:4. What does that opening line tell you? That heretofore, I don't think anyone else has even fathomed or discussed. What does I sought to find, to learn about, and then form a relationship with YAHOWAH? And he answered me, tell you. I guess I can't see all those that are chatting away there, Rich. Maybe I dare not ask that question. Should I answer it?
It's the same question I asked in some ways. And now I wound up here, obviously for a reason.
It says two things. For the likes of Rich, for most of you who are in the covenant, what it says to you is that you're here because you sought to find, to learn about, and then form a relationship with YAHOWAH, and he answered you. Correct?
Absolutely correct. I screamed it 20 plus years ago. Why is there no translations that are worth a damn? And now I found them.
Yeah. That is not true for Dowd, nor for me. I wasn't seeking to know YAHOWAH. And it was YAHOWAH who approached me. I didn't know his name at the time. Same thing would be true with Moshe. Same thing would be true with Abraham, would it not? So let's think about Dowd, the one writing this. How could this be true if YAHOWAH approached Dowd for the first time when he told Shamuel, no, I don't want any of these other sons, that this family means nothing to me. There's a kid down there in Bethlehem tending sheep. He's the one. I've chose him. If God chose Dowd, and if Dowd's first encounter with YAHOWAH was this meeting, when Shamuel went and called for him to come, and he was brought out of Bethlehem, if that was Dowd's first encounter with YAHOWAH, he could not have written these words. YAHOWAH sought Dowd out, not Dowd's seeking YAHOWAH out, if we're just to take the story on face value. Now, do you know where I'm going?
I think so.
What this means is that there are individuals in God's story that he's known long before they were born. Let me give you a second way to perceive what this means. I'm shared with you that I'm rewriting ComingHome 4. It's a book that's unpublished, and here I'm rewriting it. I'm probably rewriting it now for the 5th or 6th time, because each time I'm going back one layer further. And now I've gone back to the presentation of Dowd in the 18th chapter of Deuteronomy. And I wanted to begin there. I wanted the world to know that this story is about Dowd and the one who reflects his brilliance. And so I began there. And when you read that, what God says, and it's in his voice, is that he chose this individual, that he said that he would raise up, and that collectively they would do astonishing things on behalf of Israel. And that if you listen to him, that your relationship with Yahweh, this fractured family, would be resolved. And he spoke of Dowd. Every reference only applies to Dowd throughout Devarim 18. And he's speaking through the mouth of Moshe about Dowd for centuries before Dowd was born. 4 centuries before Dowd was born. So Yahweh clearly knew Dowd's nefesh soul, what it would be like, its Dowd's attributes, Dowd's proclivities, Dowd's character, Dowd's grit and passion and intellect. 400 years before Dowd was born. And this means that Dowd, who we are told was only 8 years old when Yahweh anointed him, and that doesn't leave a long time because we're just not mature enough at 5, 6, even 7 years old to be able to ponder these kinds of deep questions. Who is God? What is my life about? Why am I here? How do I get to know who God is and form a relationship with him? How would Dowd be able to do that tending sheep out there in Bethlehem all on his own at 6, 7, 8 years old? And how would he come up with the name of a God, Biz Yahweh, when as a shepherd down there in Bethlehem, he's not one of the few that would have had a copy of the Torah, would he? And the likelihood that as a shepherd that he is going to have been schooled at that young age so that he could have read it, even if he had a copy of it, which would be a 0% chance he would have had a copy of it. It means that Dowd was known by Yahweh well before they met. And I dare say before he spoke of him through the mouth of Moshe 400 years before he was born. And that Dowd at some point, and it could well be that Dowd is the Dowd of Numbers 11, when Moshe has his meltdown and Yahweh says, all you need to do, you just get them to the promised land. I'll take it from there. I know they're irascible. I got a couple of guys. And the text speaks of 2 guys. Dowd, which would be the Almighty's beloved. Dowd is Dowd's name means beloved, and Dowd would be the beloved of Yah, or beloved of God. And my Dowd, this person who's serving as the hand of Dowd. And he wrote them into the script. But let's go back further. You have to go all the way back to the 14th statement in the first chapter of Devarim, before animal life even existed. The 4th day of creation. And that's where you first learn about these 2 individuals. Dowd, individual writing this psalm, and the lesser luminary reflecting his brilliance, all for the purpose of serving as signs for the Moedim. And God waxes poetic about the role and the identity of the greater and lesser luminary. And he's not talking about the sun and the moon, except to the symbolic nature of the fact that the sun is a source of brilliance. It glows. It radiates light, just as Dowd said of his soul, the sun. And that the moon is nothing but a mirror reflecting the sun's brilliance. And Yah spoke of them in the fourth day of creation. And it can't be that he is trying to tell you about creating the sun and the moon, because plant life could not have existed on the third day unless the sun was conceived before that. And oh, by the way, there wasn't even an earth when the sun was conceived. The sun is billions of years older than the earth. So he's speaking symbolically. That's why he didn't use, Hebrew has a word for sun and moon. He didn't say the word for sun and moon. He said greater and lesser luminary, source of light and enlightenment. Therefore, Yahweh knew about these two individuals, what they would do, that he could count on them, that they would play this role in his story. Well, that would have been billions of years ago. Well, perhaps not billions of years ago. And if you wanted to go through the chronology of it, the fourth day would be just prior to the time that animal life emerged from the sea, and so you're dealing with the time before that. So a little over 1 billion years ago. I don't want to exaggerate here. So a little over 1 billion years ago, Yahweh knew that he would have a greater and lesser luminary, one reflecting the brilliance of another, and that this young man's, Dowd's soul would glow, would be brilliant, and that he would lead the way to God, that through him we would all have the opportunity to be great, even glorious. And so Dowd has sought to learn about and form a relationship with Yahweh for a very long time, and Yahweh has indeed responded to Dowd. Dowd is the only one I'm aware of that Anah, this is the actual verbal root for the word that was incorrectly rendered humble in English Bibles, but I represented accurately with respond earlier in this Mizmowr. It's the only place that I'm aware where Yahweh responds to the individual as opposed to us being invited to respond to Yahweh. If you're unaware of the fact that one of the repetitive themes throughout God's presentation of these very moed that the greater and lesser luminary fulfill and serve as signs representing them, symbols of them, they're filled with a request that since the moed mikre means to invite, their invitations to meet with God, he is asking us to anah, to respond and come into the presence of his fiery light on these days. So that is the normal order of things. God invites us to meet with him, and we respond during his invitations. But in this case, Dowd is such an extraordinary part of Yahweh being able to deliver the benefits of the covenant and to enrich and empower and perfect and prolong the lives of his children and his family, that Yahweh actually answers Dowd, as should a father. He recognizes his son's voice, and he says he responds to him, and all of his anxieties and concerns he's delivered me. Can you imagine being Dowd and you recognize that it's right for you to serve as the Passover lamb. It's right for you to take the guilt of every covenant member into hell and to deposit it there. You imagine the anxiety of saying, I'm going to somehow endure the Romans whipping the flesh off my back to the point I don't even look human anymore. And then nailing me to this post such that I endure the most excruciating form of torture ever invented. And then I have to write about it, and I have to witness it, then I have to, 1,000 years later, I have to endure it. And then after enduring it and then going into hell or a heavenly cause, my people are going to spit at me. They're going to deny I did it. They're going to actually come up with false messiahs, and they're going to credit the false messiahs of doing everything that I actually did, and they're going to negate it. Imagine the anxiety, the concerns of that. And that's why there's a lesser luminary, isn't it? That's why there's a Goy whose God is YAHOWAH. Because that wrong had to be righted. Dowd had to be reintroduced as our Savior, as the Passover lamb, as the one who carried our guilt into Sheol to perfect us, as the firstborn of firstborn children, as the one that we can follow to YAHOWAH and be enriched and empowered, becoming great. Someone would have to reflect his brilliance. And that's what delivered Dowd from the anxiety and the concern. You see this too in Yasha'yah. When he finally sees that man from Edom, Obed-Edom, who was tasked with the responsibility of bringing the Ark of the Covenant, positioning it so that Dowd can anoint it. And he finally sees that all of the prophecies and promises and insights that he has delivered, which have not resonated with a single Yehud, not a single person in all of this time, and have been corrupted by the religious, particularly by Christians, that he finally sees this man from Edom, the final Zarowa, the Choter that he devoted a chapter to, the Nakry, this observant foreigner, a very cold voice calling out in the wilderness, that he arrives. And Yasha'yah, Isaiah, is so ecstatic, he says, that's my Zarowa. That's my guy. He is now in that wine vat with me. He's going to save many. In fact, I even think it's we're going to save many, because he's reciting Yasha'yah's script as Yahweh delineated it. This is all one integrated story. And it is the story that I'm telling in Coming Home 4. The opening paragraph of that volume says that there are two truths that are essential for you to know. That Yahweh's beloved Son, the anointed Messiah, our former and returning King, who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikuwrym, providing us with eternal light, life, perfection, and adoption into God's family, is none other than Dowd, who the world knows as David. And that since the world has ripped him off, robbed him, plundered him, denied him all of these accolades and achievements, stealing his very titles from him through identity theft, that God spoke of another who would bring the dignity back to Dowd, and by doing so, point to all that Dowd has accomplished through his father to provide reconciliation in the fractured family and bring God's people back together, to recognize that his God is YAHOWAH, and that together they achieved everything that needed to be done for us to live forever in their company. It took two. And these two souls stand out from all others. One of the many things which made Dowd exceptionally unique, of course, during his first life that he would grow with YAHOWAH, was his thirst for Torah teaching. In the third volume of An Introduction to God, volume 3, it's called Torah, and the preponderance of it is written to disclose and to examine, to learn from Dowd's 119th Mizmowr, which is his ode to the Torah. He wrote 8 lines regarding each of the 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet in alphabetical order to describe how we should observe YAHOWAH's Torah teaching. Brilliant. He wrote the 19th Mizmowr as sort of the cliff notes to say, the Torah is perfect, restores the soul. And between these two, it was darn near perfection in terms of explaining God's guidance. Dowd, of course, would also write the Mizmowr that convinced me to say yes to YAHOWAH when I said, you want me to do what? No one has ever survived that before. Thank you. Oh, God, I can't say no. But we need to negotiate. Can we negotiate? Will you allow me to negotiate? Sure. What do you want? Well, I want these 3 things. Okay, reach into your pocket. Dowd wrote the psalm that was in my pocket. And it's the one that said, yeah, you're willing to do these things with me. I will do these things for you. I knew what you were going to ask 3,000 years before you asked. Because we've had a relationship for a very long time. The more Dowd, of course, read in the Torah, the more reflective of God's nature he became. It is in this way, by studying the Torah, that the Messiah found the answers, including why he should be the one who volunteers to serve as the Pesach Gael. And truly, it's how YAHOWAH responds to us today. It's how we listen to him. Dowd's life, to an extent well beyond most of our own, was filled with monumental challenges. Some of these, particularly in the stress of battle or while sharing insights into his relationship with God, when all were opposed to him, he navigated most of them gloriously. But he was not consistently great when dealing with political and family issues. At times, he allowed his anxiety over challenges that he or YAHOWAH could have resolved really expeditiously drag on to the point they became distracting and counterproductive. While clearly all's well that ends well, and Dowd's story ends gloriously, Dowd's journey was considerably less tranquil than he is, of course, leading on in this moment. And that's essential, because everyone who works with YAHOWAH grows with him. We fail at times. We're wrong at times. And through it all, we grow. We develop a backbone. Our character is forged in the fires of challenges. And we don't always get it right. And we have to learn lessons. We actually have to experience the most embittering of all human emotions, which is the abuse of a fractured family. Because otherwise we're not in a position to speak for God. We don't understand what he has gone through these 6,000 years. So all of this is vitally important for us. Something for us to know about even Dowd, the closest person in human existence to his father, is that even Dowd grew, developed character, made mistakes, got up, learned from them, and moved on. It's what makes him real. It's what means that what this means is that when we're paired together through eternity, we are in a position where we can be comfortable together. You know, he is not up here and we're down here. We're working together, comfortable together, helping one another, more together than we would be individually. Now, personally, apart from attacks on my credibility when speaking for YAHOWAH, which are many, or the merit of YadaYahowah, it's rare that I fret over much of anything else, unless you're trying to disparage me and recognizing that credibility is the currency of this program of writing on behalf of YAHOWAH. I really don't fret it. I don't care. I learned many, many years ago that if you Google my name, you'll find that there's millions of people who obviously have no clue who I am, but seem to have opinions. It's what happens if you live your life with your head above the crowd. And in all of that time, I've learned that I really don't care. And the only time I care is when somebody besmirches my reputation in association with my work on behalf of YAHOWAH and YadaYahowah. Because, again, credibility when associated with God is the currency of our success. But the other stuff I don't care about. Disappointments, yes, I've had my share. And more than enough challenges to surmount for a lifetime. And yet I'm always confident, expecting a favorable resolution. We've gone through difficult times and we have always prevailed. So particularly now when collaborating with YAHOWAH, to this extent at this time, my confidence soars. Therefore, I concur with Dowd's conclusion. YAHOWAH always delivers. And with YAH, we really have nothing to be concerned about. Yeah, with one exception, and that is that we are human. The pressures are immense. The audience is hostile. And it takes a lot out of a person when you're constantly whack, whack, whack. It took Moshe, who's a far greater man than I, and it wore him down to the point he asked God to kill him. It took Dowd to the point that he turned into mush by the end of the Absalom rebellion. It's tough. And so, I try to pace myself. I talk to Rich about this all the time, that we have to pace ourselves. It is an all-in game in the sense that sunrise to sunset, 7 days a week, we're at this one way or another. But it can't all be before this camera. It can't all be in social media where we're so subject to criticism and attack all the time. Part of it has to be growing with God, studying his testimony, analyzing his words, writing, learning, and then sharing. So I know that YAHOWAH will deliver the intended result because we've already read about it. So it all boils down to this. We must learn to know and then know to grow. We travel to YAHOWAH in our minds, relying on his words to guide us. And once there, happiness happens. Productivity is assured. I don't want to sugarcoat this, though. Happiness does happen. Productivity is assured. That does not mean that every day is sunshine and tulips. It just isn't. Life is tough. And if you're going to be with God and going to spend eternity with him, he wants you tested and true. He wants you to have some grit. And so there will be challenges to overcome. And this happily ever after happens, but it doesn't happen until we enter the restoration of the conditions experienced in Eden come Sukah on October 7th, a Shabbat, in year 6000 YAH 2033. And at that point, we will know nothing but joy, because all of the anguishing individuals will be gone. And I think at an hour and 31 minutes, this is probably the right place for us to conclude this program. We have just made our way through the fourth statement of Mizmowr song 34 through 34, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're about to start 5, but I think I'm going to postpone 5. There's a lot to learn in this song, and I would much prefer that we go through it methodically and that we glean everything that we can from it and that we grow as a result of it, because here we have just been told that it is Dowd's soul that is glowing with light, radiating light, and that he invited us to listen to YAHOWAH so that we could follow him to this same result that causes us to be glorified and to become great. And that is worth our attention. And I'm glad that we invested this time, and we're going through this deliberately, methodically, intellectually, capitalizing on all that our great King and Savior had to say. And so we'll return to Mizmowr song, Psalm 34:5, in our next program of Gibowr. Good day.